Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Tonight with me from Central Florida as well, just south of the Pinos Palace, where, of course, I'm broadcasting to you live from the Extreme Studios. I have the young 20-something Professor Pixel from the Great Midwest. Joining us shortly will be RDV. We're going to be talking about the limited release video on demand movie called The Collective. And boy, what a wild, weird, wacky movie this is, because it's not good at all, but it looks good and it's extremely silly. And despite how bad it is, I could bitch on it. I actually sort of enjoyed it a little bit. This is a movie where Don Johnson heads a collective of assassins that work off the books, allegedly, to go after cases that have pissed them off professionally and personally. So in this case, Pixel, it's human trafficking. And boy, this movie has got really horrible editing, really bad action fight scenes. It's got some interesting characters. It's got a young blondish guy that actually I thought was kind of the star of the movie. As awkward as he may have seemed, I thought his character is the strongest. He looks like a young male model. And then you have the older male model in Tyrese, who's sitting there scowling and talking like this. And then you've got Sasha Banks, the WWE women's star, who's crazy knife lady. And then you got Ruby Rose. And then you got some weirdo bad billionaire dude. And you've got human beings in cages and chained up, getting sold at an auction. This has the makings of a winner all to it. And this is complete great B-level cinema. What's your initial take, Pixel?
My initial take is that I spent about an hour and a half of my life watching a movie. It was certainly a movie.
All right.
Yeah. Listen. I watched Batwoman season 1, and I actually enjoyed a bit of Batwoman season 1, which also starred Ruby Rose before she got the axe. But she is still just not. None of these actors were giving it their all. I don't feel like they were doing that. It wasn't as bad as this one movie I watched, 10 Seconds Gone, where you're watching as Bruce Willis has phoned in the rest of his life just in that performance.
Oh, yeah, it's the Paycheck movie. Yeah.
Oh, it was but he was in that movie, though. There are so many films that he signed on for where he appeared for 2 seconds and disappeared while the rest of the movie went on. But in that movie, he was actually there. Every 10 minutes, he would appear with that stupid voice. It was just bad acting. And here it's just, it's not even, I can't say it's bad acting. It's just not acting. They just didn't care. They were reading it off of a script and they were like, okay, let's call it a day.
Yeah.
Even the world, like the world building behind this is kind of pathetic. It's like a concept. Yeah. The concept doesn't even, like, nobody cared. Like, the person putting this together didn't think, well, if I'm putting together a team, then who do I need? No, they don't care. They just thought, well, let's see.
You know, I'll talk about the older people, and maybe you know some of the younger ones, are basically the one dude in it. So Don Johnson's in his early to mid-70s. He's a guy who grew up on, obviously, Miami Vice. Was huge for me. Loved that show. Equalizer, a bunch of other things from the 80s. A lot of cop shows, detective shows. That was pretty much the last decade when you would have cars exploding for no reason, like in TJ Hooker. About every other episode, they wreck a car, or a car goes over a cliff and explodes. You had gunshots that almost kind of sound like, and this is just your typical TV day, right? And so when Don Johnson's on here, I thought, well, I hope it's just not a token appearance, because Don Johnson reminds me of a guy that I go, damn, he's just cool. He's not like tough like a Clint Eastwood. He's not an ass kicker like something, but he's just got an attitude about him. And I've always liked him. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's not the littlest guy in this world. And he just has this natural charisma about him, even at his ripe old age. And so he plays more of a restrained kind of leader, but I believe you could put him in a room with anybody and he could just tear him an asshole by looking at him. And I feel like he kind of knew it in here, but to your point, he was just sort of there, and he showed up a little bit more than I thought he was going to. And the reason why I say that is because during the opening credits, it says the movie stars this person, that person, and then it says with, like, Tyrese Gibson. with Don Johnson. Like, uh-oh, they're not getting top billing, and it's with. That means they're only in here for a few minutes. So I got a bit more of the Don Johnson than I planned on, and that's a good thing. More Don Johnson is always good. He's always had great hair up there with Michael Douglas and everybody from back in the day. And I got to tell you, even if their acting sucked, I want to say the outfits in this movie, stood out tremendously too. Because you got Sasha Banks, WWE superstar female, who's, I don't know if she's transitioning over into movies, but she's like the crazy muscle of the billionaire dude, and she's always carrying like that giant K-bar kind of knife to the Rambo knife, which is funny because her and Ruby Rose is wearing like all white. And Ruby, I don't care what your politics are, please go eat a cheeseburger or three. I mean, because you're pretty naturally, and people take you more seriously, especially if you're supposed to get violent like you are in this movie. She played more of the kind of, well, I'm in charge of the operation, but I'm not the muscle. And those two kind of, every time they were on scene together, they kind of were like sniping at each other like women do, which I thought was funny. And I went, oh shit, it's going to be this bad of a movie. Because when you watch it, you get the opening scene. Yeah, they did make a Miami Vice reference. We're going to get to that, obviously. I thought they could have done more, but at least they made one. You get this dude, and he's by himself. And I gotta say this: the movie looks good. Got some nice overhead shots. It looks like it's in the fall, maybe up in New England or somewhere. Not sure where. And he's a blonde-haired guy, and he's got the black T-shirt on, so he's doing some stealthy covert ops. And Mrs. Xtreme's on the other couch, and she's like, "Well, what's he supposed to be?" And I said, "I guess Spec Ops, because when in doubt, Black Ops, Spec Ops. They're never White Ops, by the way." He's running around, and he goes into this house of people that are on patrol with guns, and they're holding the guns really weird, and they've got the ski masks on. They're not in any sort of like patrol formation or timing. I'm like, what the fuck? And then he goes in there, and as soon as he goes in, he rolls, I think, gets on his knees, does the double nut punch, and then he does the cross gun thing that shoots him, and I went, oh dear Lord. And then he goes through the whole house with unnecessary flips, rolls, dives, and really, really bad, some of the worst action scenes I've seen on TV or movies probably ever, shooting everybody until the end. When he captures his prey and shoots him, we find out that it's just an exercise. Oh, okay. Because this is his training ground to see whether or not he could make it into a collective. That would explain, of course, the giant boxes of cardboard that were sitting there neatly stacked for him to get thrown through, and how it took him 4 seconds to roll or something. It's like TJ Hooker doing a rolling dive. It took forever, but at least TJ looks menacing. This guy doesn't. So I'm ranting a lot about this opening scene because you know what? The rest of the movie is the exact same damn thing. There's nothing to it, but there is some humor, which I guess if you're going to be bad, you know it. I think they dove into it, did pretty well. Let me pause here for a little minute because I got to ask you. I had no idea what you were thinking about because this is not an action movie. I would say, yeah, Pixel, you got to fucking see this to know what an action movie is.
No.
This is no 10 to Midnight or Mechanic or anything Bronson related. This is crap at its finest level. At this point, how hurt were you?
Oh, I was already like, I was trying to give it like a reason to care. See, I know you hate the Meg, and the Meg 2 was an option, but the thing is with the Meg, it's not a good movie, but it's fun. This wasn't even fun for me. It wasn't fun for me. Like I'm watching them, and it's like okay. At first, I thought they were going to make as silly as it sounds. Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. I thought they were going to make the Collective the bad guys. The Collective's after us.
Yeah, I really don't know either. And this guy Lucas Till, I guess he was in X-Men and a few other things I'm not too familiar with and all that. I guess the MacGyver, Angus MacGyver, maybe he was MacGyver on the reboot, because why the hell am I going to watch that when the original's out there, right? So everyone's like fawning over him, his performance. He's a decent looking guy, and I thought he did well with the role. But again, somebody, as like I like to say with your age, as being the young 20-something here on the Xtreme Movie Show, you're not going to get the Miami Vice reference where, at the end where he has to go to the Billionaires Club to bid on the human, how do we call it, slaves, for lack of a better term. He's got the white jacket on, everything else, and a flowery shirt. I'm like, you know what? They even got this wrong, and it's embarrassing because Don Johnson's there, because it should have been a pastel color, not a Hawaiian type shirt. They got it completely friggin' wrong. And I'm like, okay, I get it's a Miami Vice reference, and you're right, they did mention it. But it's funny because you got a guy that's trying to be a model, and then you got Tyrese as a male model who doesn't do anything good looking at all, except for he wears a really incredibly good looking black turtleneck. And I don't think he changed his outfit. So I'm going, this is probably one of those movies they made in a week.
Yeah. Yep. They finished it and they were like, okay, this is done.
Now, I know that on one of your other channels that you work on too, you guys were doing reviews of the TV show, the female-centric Kung Fu. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. See, that was actually a decent show because they cared about their characters and had some idea of where their storylines were heading. This one, again, like you said, they were filming this in a week. They didn't have time to actually plot out. Should we care?
You know, I chose not to watch it because I was a big fan of the '70s shows with David Carradine. And when I first would flip on it, if I was flipping around, I know you guys reviewing or listening to y'all guys doing it, I had the problem of a 100-pound woman beating the crap out of everybody. I just did. The difference to me is night and day in that the original show, it was more about a particular philosophical ideal that they would tell a story through. And that was the whole genius of it. It wasn't an ass kicking thing. It was more of the restrained. If something's going to happen in terms of action, it's going to be at the very end and it's going to be a buildup. And the show that you guys covered, my take for not having watched it is I'm tired of seeing all these, small people beat up a room full of big people because it's not realistic and it's not really done well. Here, though, at least in this movie, I got to give Kung Fu credit because at least I thought some of the action scenes were shot well. Here, everything was the quick cut. So when you'd go to hit somebody, there'd be a cut. You wouldn't see the person's make contact, and especially with the throws and all that. This was Bush League, and not a way to show stuff. And even in recent movies that we've talked about, the Meg we've not talked about yet, I actually enjoyed the last part of this most recent Meg movie, when they got to Fun Island, even though they could have done it a lot better. Everything up to that sucked, I thought. I still don't think it's good, but this is not a Meg review. It's just that there's no action in for the most part today, and if it is, it's few and far between. Whether it's Extraction or say Playing with Gerard Butler from earlier in the year, and RDV and I had talked about that at great length. How we're just missing this, and we're craving to have it. Of course, there's Mission Impossible, so there used to be a lot of these kinds of movies, late night TV, and unfortunately, this is what we got. It is video on demand, so I didn't know what to expect. But with Don Johnson, Tyrese, I was expecting more, and I didn't get it.
Yeah. Yep. There's really a whole lot of nothing from this. Like they had the whole part where he dies, and then I'm alive. Oh, okay. That's a thing that happened. I don't care. When he died, I didn't care. When he came back, I didn't care.
There's some funny stuff in here though, which kind of kept it going, because if I thought, and I was wrong, and I admit it because I'm a man, that this movie was going to kind of come out either because it was the right time, because of the word of mouth success of this movie, Sound of Freedom, which I've yet to see and plan to, and talk about, and how that's really doing very well financially, despite people not wanting to see it, and however you feel about that subject matter of human trafficking. I thought this movie was going to kind of be like that, but maybe a more kick-ass version of it, let's say, and it's not. It's a very thinly, it's like if you're a kid and you got the orange juice and you drink it and you go, oh, let me pour a little water in it. Hey, now it's full there, and then you realize, oh, it tastes like shit. When you do stupid stuff like that, it's like that. It's so thin, it's horrible. But there's a couple of scenes there that I thought were funny. So after he's earned through his first kill the right to be in the collective, meets up with Tyrese. They're supposed to try to find this human auction where they're gonna auction off humans. And so, of course, we're immediately thinking it's child sex trafficking, which it ends up not being. Kind of, sort of, really. It's other stuff. He within like 10 seconds gets on an iPad in front of Tyrese and socially engineers, through looking at some searches through his past experience as a lawyer, who got bored with it, according to him, and wanted something with more action. he finds out where this one dude who'd be like, wow, this would be the kind of guy that would be interested in it because his buddy, was connected to the auction. So if we get a hold of him, we're going to find out where the auction is. So let's get this guy, find out the information, go to the auction, and kill the SOB. And Tyrese is like, you can't do that. It won't work. Just shoot him. Treat it like an ambush, right? So Tyrese is working from the crib as the control guy because he's a made man, and the other dude's off the grid. So he goes to this beach where there's like 4 people standing around, guns clearly visible while they're standing there, and some old dude comes up with this little hot blonde honey, and he's like, yeah, do that thing, baby, now twirl. And he's taking pictures of her, and she's doing stuff. And I can't tell if she wants to be there or not, or if she's a sugar baby or what, but she's kind of hot.
She dies.
Well, this is funny because he's going to be like, okay, I got this. And he goes up there, and Tyrese is like, you can't do it. If you shoot him, the other ones are going to know. You're not going to get them. They're going to shoot you. You're going to, and he's right. And he's like, you need to start shooting them all. He's like, no, I'm gonna take him out. I'll figure it out. And he walks up to the beach. There's no cover anywhere. I'm like, how the fuck is he going to do this? He has his pistol with a silencer on it, and he goes to the trash can at the end of the stairwell, aims it at the one guy who's not looking, takes him out. He aims at the other guy, and there's like 3 more dudes plus the old dude and the chick getting their pictures taken nearby. Like, misses, and then kind of has to like shoot them all. And then while this is happening, the girl doing all the sexy poses gets shot. And then the old dude starts running, and it's that old scene where you're looking at the waves on the beach and you don't see anything. And then from the left to the right, he's running like almost in slow motion. And then he gets like shot in the ass. And then he goes up to him, gets the information from him. And I'm laughing because this is funny. He's like, look at her. Look at her. That's what's going to happen to you if you don't tell me. And she's like staring at him all dead. I'm like, bro, they violated all the old 80s things. She's hot. She's not supposed to die, right? But then he like shoots the dude, and it's like, that's pretty graphic. And of course, he has to take a picture to prove that he's dead. And that's how they find their way into where the place is, but not until the collective have figured out Tyrese's position, and they put the hit on him coincidentally that night. And so
no, not the collective.
I'm sorry, you're right. The baddies. Baddies
Yeah.
is the appropriate word. The baddies do it. So speaking of baddies, Sasha Banks from the WWE, she's always holding a knife, and she's almost like what's his face from Commando? John, it's good to see you again, mate. That guy, right? I mean, she's holding it, twirling like she doesn't know what to do with it. I'm like, this one's familiar looking. She's kind of hot and kind of crazy looking. And then I'm like, oh, it's Sasha Banks. Hey, she did good in here. Most of the time, people transition over from acting like Cena. Cena needs to be cast as an asshole because it would work. Sasha was cast as a bit of a crazy bitch, and it worked. I agree with you. Ruby Rose probably has some natural acting ability, but they didn't use her great in here. Because when they have this house fight and all that, everything goes on, we get to see her have some skills. And we've always said in an action movie, that's what you want to do. You want to see how competent the bad guys are, because you go up the bad guy food chain, you got to take him out. Levels of difficulty. Okay, this person's level C, take him out. Now you go up to the tougher one, or level B. Okay, now you come up to the main boss who's a level A. And that's what happens here. So Tyrese gets whacked, allegedly, and he's on his own. Don Johnson gets on him. They have a nice little back and forth on the laptop. He's like, you have to come in. I'm canceling it. Truth of the matter is, you did good, kid, but you weren't well prepared. We have to close down, get some new intelligence. Like, I got this, because everyone's got this these days, right? And so he goes undercover, dressed as Don Johnson would have back in Miami Vice, almost. Let me pause here because I'm rambling over it here a little bit. But are you enjoying any of it up to this point?
No. Again,
you're really not.
Again, the whole thing, like, I obviously should care, but I can't. Like, it's not like I want to hate it. I want to think it's like, really, oh, this is just so bad. Let me explain. I don't have that anger in me because it was just it was an hour and a half of nothingness. It's empty. It doesn't even have, like you're saying, Sasha Banks, she was good in it. She's fine. Everything's fine. It exists. Yeah. That's all I can really say.
Yeah. Yeah, and the problem here is if they were really graphic with the violence, but not in a joking sort of way that you laugh at, like the squirting blood coming out of somebody that you laugh at because it's funny, rather than, oh, that makes me sick to my stomach, where it's brutal. And there is a difference, and a lot of times they don't get it right, because here he goes to this old rundown facility where they're having a secret billionaire auction of all these human slaves. So we're led to believe. So, I mean, this budget must have been $100,000, in addition to the salaries, because there's like a Ferrari, I think, and like, I don't know, a Mercedes, and then like, I don't know, a Nissan Sentra or something, and people are getting in line, and Ruby Rose is there as the head of security, I guess, checking people off on her list. And I thought, how fucking asinine is this? You're billionaires. You're supposed to be untouchable, untraceable. So you should know who everybody is. And she's sitting there, I swear to God, with a clipboard and a pen going, and you are, and he makes up like kind of like a name. And she's like, okay, you're on a list here. Wait a minute, what's that in your ear? And he's like, that's my hearing aid. But the only reason why it works is because there's some Playboy dude, and I'm bringing him up on purpose. You'll understand here in a minute. He had pulled up with two chicks on either arm, young babies that looked like they didn't really want to be with him. And he's like laughing up. It's like, hey, buddy, do you need a date for tonight? You want to use one of mine? Ha ha ha! I like the redhead. I prefer her, but have your choice. It's like, no, I'm good, thanks. And they start talking. So the dude vouches for him. He's just a bro. And we're like, okay, he's undercover with these two chicks. What's going on here? So they get into this place, which is nothing more than a warehouse. And you're like, you're a billionaire and you're having this in a warehouse in a rundown part of a questionable side of town. What the hell were you guys thinking? It should have been like in a castle in the Austrian Alps or something. And we haven't even seen the goods, except for one dude that was an informant that they kept in a cage, and like they like put a collar on them, and they would like rattle the cage like you would with your knife, and just stupid stuff. So it's really dumb. So they sit down, and he's trying to like be cool and James Bondish or whatever like that. He's like, "Are you going to buy the informant?" He's like, "I very may well do that." And there's all this back and forth. But then we find out, because Sasha Banks' people, a lot of them got killed in that assault. She gets a whole bunch more. He excuses himself to go to the men's room, and he walks into where all the security's at, whacks them all. You okay?
Yeah, those were children screaming in the distance.
Okay. I was going to say something like dogs moaning there. Or you know what it sounds like? It
What?
sounds like the women that were led around like dogs on all fours with collars right out
Yeah,
of
what
the
the?
album cover from the 80s.
Hey!
Because that's what they were
Let's be
selling.
fair. Let's be fair. The men were too.
That's true. That's true. No matter how they identified or how they represented, they were in their underwears and their skivvies being led around. It's bringing up a funny point, because he turns and he gets these shish kebabs, excuse me, because there's always a conveniently placed hot person that has drinks or shish kebabs or shrimp or the pate or whatever available. And so he uses these skewers as weapons, and he has them shoot out, and it's a really horrible shootout. But what does he do? He frees like the 3 or 4 people that were up for auction, because that's all there were. And yet you've got like 10 billionaires in the audience. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. They're not like Ukrainian models that are like 20 years old, or anything. They're just like Joes. The first chick, he's like, and we've got Cassandra, where the hell her name is, from Lincoln, Nebraska. She works really, really hard, and she's from Lincoln, Nebraska, and she works really, really hard, and she sells for $1 million. I'm like, we don't even get to see if she's got a hot body or brainwashed or whatever. It makes no sense at all. And so the main guy's, of course, doing the auctioneering because he's a weirdo. But what's cool is he's got a plan, because Tyrese is back now, give him the intel. And he uses Tyrese's old line. It's like, well, I'm just going to ambush them all because it works. He takes all the slaves with all the guns, and they go out there and they just shoot everybody. So the 2 chicks the old Playboy came in with are sitting there beating the shit out of him, and everybody's getting shot. It is so bad. I'm sorry you're not enjoying this, because it's more fun to talk about than to watch.
Yeah, no, everything that you said, you enjoying it is more enjoyable than than the movie itself.
And that happens. It is so stupid. It is so dumb. If you're going to put this on, have a couple stiff drinks or be in the right frame of mood for that. Sometimes, if you call it Catholic guilt or whatever it is, you feel the need to perform some self-punishment on you. This would be an appropriate movie, because your indifference, I feel. in a lot of movies. That's why I really didn't want to watch The Meg 2. But today I wanted to punish myself, so I watched The Meg 2 and this movie because I wasn't sure exactly what we were going to cover. And like I say, The Meg 2's is horrible. It's two different movies. The last 20 minutes they set up to be kind of like almost a funny action sequence, and it almost could have been, but it's so watered down because it's made for the Chinese audience and everything's so sanitized. It makes absolutely no sense. And that's why I always say, oh, well, at least this is better than The Meg, because The Meg is a lot of money, a lot of names, nothing happens for the most part, like the last episode of Wayward Pines, season 1, episode 10 that we just got done reviewing, except for the last 5 minutes. This movie's the same way. It's horrible, it's crap, but I think it knows it's crap, and just they mail it in.
That's the thing they mail it in. Whereas with The Meg, at least the first one, because I haven't seen the second one, they know that their movie isn't anything great. But you have Jason Statham being Jason Statham, and they are fooling around with sharks. They know it's a bunch of bullshit. It's a fluff.
It's not done well,
but it's fun.
It's not fun. It's not.
I have fun.
So when you get a big budget movie like The Meg, you expect a certain level of professionalism in it. To me, if I'm going to spend my money on a product and it's going to be supposedly top tier, I want it to be that way. And somebody could say, well, hey, every movie you go see at the matinee is $10 or 12 or whatever it is here in Central Florida. So you just go to one you like and it's going to be good. Well, that's not true. We've talked about this before, especially with television and movies today. And while the movie world, I think, is changing with their delivery mechanism, it's one of those situations where you can't please everybody. And for the past 20 years, with movies being watered down tremendously, I think that's the new norm. So to me, this movie sucks, but it's probably considered an okay film by video on demand standards. So maybe it is, but it's atrocious. And The Meg, it's more insulting to me because of the amount of time and money they put into it. And I'm not a big, say, Guardians of the Galaxy fan, but I also watched the third one this weekend. Out of everything I watched this weekend, but Guardians 3 is by far the best film out of all of it. They almost made you like and feel emotionally charged over CGI animals, and it was done fairly well if you like James Gunn's style. We're talking about other stuff here because it's digressing from the fact that The Collective is a movie that watch it when you want some pain, and sometimes you have to pull that out of your movie watching repertoire. And everybody, I think, knows what I'm talking about. Pixel, it's time for you to chime in.
Okay, well, let me just say that I mean, we're pretty much at the end of the movie. I can't advise this. I can't advise anybody go watch this. It's not worth your time. You said punishment. It's not. It's sadly not to the point where it's bad enough. Like, oh, this is just trying to be horrible. They just don't care. Nobody on that set cared. What is this movie on? No. You would have to pay for this movie if you wanted to watch it legally online, and that's the only place that you can find it. So don't do that. Don't. They don't deserve a dime.
Yeah. Probably been better talking about Pee-wee's like Big Adventure or something, seeing as how he passed this past weekend. We mentioned that briefly on. Yeah. All right. Anything you need to plug for what's coming up with you on your other channels this week?
Well, a certain frog would like me to point you in the direction of a geeky puppet show where they do comic book readings, and I do silly voices, and I scream at Spider-Man. Also on the Doctor Who, we just review Doctor Who every Wednesday night at 11:30 EST. Yeah, that's pretty much it, though.
A little bit of a late night stream, yeah. So for those of you in chat, we just got through reviewing Wayward Pines. Our schedules have been not in sympathy with each other lately, so we're trying to remedy that on both our ends here. So we're going to be doing James Bond next weekend as we go in order, since Pixel needs to see them all. As a man, I'm helping him punch that card. So the Bond stuff's going to be great until we get to the Daniel Craig era. But the next movie from that, since we just did For Your Eyes Only, will be Octopussy. So we'll be reviewing that maybe even 6 o'clock next week too, to give it a little bit of extra time too. So I'm sure you can find that everywhere. That's kind of a fun one. I kind of like it actually too. And then of course we'll come up with something there for Sunday night when RDV is available. He wasn't able to make it tonight, so hope he's feeling better. He's a little under the weather too. So if you got suggestions, guys, let us know. And since it's August, now is the perfect time to mention that we get overwhelmed with the amount of suggestions usually for Halloween movies to cover, because we like to cover different ones and do some additional material. So be thinking about what movies you'd like us to cover. We definitely did a lot of different ones last year, and we still have our list of ones we didn't get to that we're going to draw upon. So October, we plan for that to be a fairly busy month. And if there's a couple of TV shows out there, old, weird, or different, season ones particularly, let us know. We're creating our shortlist now for the next one in 2 weeks that we're going to be starting. And usually what we do is we give every episode of season one of whatever the show is, whether we like it, hate it, it's new, or we're rewatching it, whatever it is, fair shake. And that's kind of fun because that kind of builds too. So we've done Twin Peaks, Wayward Pines. We did Haven, I think was one of our first ones. We did Resident Alien, which I think you guys picked up on your other channel, and a few others. So there's definitely some TV backlog in there as well, but it's got to be the right ones. And one of these days, we'll get the TJ Hooker, I promise. We have not done Byzantium for Halloween. Interesting. Something in English. Yes. Well, all right. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for spending some time with us, and the feedback and engagement. That's always fun to see that going on there, too. We really appreciate that. Until Tuesday night, we'll see you then. Have a good night, and as always, stay extreme.
This was not a damn